Hey guys, UnoPro here for my first ever top player interview. I am joined today by Nowayitsj. Just a quick side note, as you can see on the screen there is a game going on in the background. Basically what we decided, because Jay doesn't have a webcam at the moment, we're going to be having some of his gameplay after the patch because I know there's not a lot of resources floating around and it's nice to see some gameplay from a top player. So that'll just be on in the background, but without further ado, let's get into things. So Jay, could you tell us a quick bit about your history with Duelist, how long you've been playing, and maybe any other card game experience you might have?
Alright, I've been playing Duels for about a year, since October. I've been doing tournaments ever since like my first week playing. I got second in my very first one, and I usually do get second in most of my tournaments I enter. And I actually even had a meme around me for a long time until like a few months ago, where if I entered a tournament, they wouldn't even expect me to win. They'd just be like, "Hey, he's just gonna get second place. No worries." If I get to him in grand finals. So I usually just got second a lot. Then after a while, I won 3 tournaments in a row to end that streak, and now here I am, just entering tournaments and sometimes winning, sometimes not. I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for 9 years too, so it carried on over to Duels to help me learn.
Yeah. Alright, so I just want to talk about tournaments for a little bit because you are a very experienced tournament player. So over time we've had lots of different tournaments that have come and gone in the Duelist scene. How do you feel about the number of tournaments that we've had, and do you think that's enough?
Um, Personally, for me, I think it's enough because I only enter like 1 or 2 a week. Usually the money ones. And there's usually 3 or 4 a week. So for me, it's good because I'm just too lazy, honestly, to enter too many. So I usually enter like the Snow Chaser one because it has like $200 prizes each week and a 1500 finale. So for me, it's perfect. But there definitely could be some more casual ones, like daily ones each week for other players.
Okay, so as time has gone on, we've seen a number of new formats gain popularity. Originally, it was just a lot of unlimited sideboard single faction. Do you prefer the Conquest format that we're seeing a lot more now, or do you prefer tournaments that allow a lot more flexibility regarding generals and deck?
Um, I think it's cool to have diverse tournament settings, like one unlimited sideboard every now and then like Conquest most of the time. But for the most part, I prefer Conquest because it just is a lot funner to spectate and play as whenever you get to play different factions that you don't normally want to play, especially in like a format where Cassava, for example, is the best general, so you don't have to do mirrors all the time. Um, Also, because I have this weird mentality whenever I do unlimited sideboarding that I have to change decks every single time just because I have the option. So Conquest like lets me not have to mess with my head as much. um, Also, the one thing I really dislike about unlimited sideboarding all the time is because, for example, if I want to use Songhai, I really liked Kalios a few days ago, but I couldn't bring it to an unlimited sideboard tournament because Zenrui just completely destroyed Lantern Fox, Heart Seekers, and all that. So stuff like that makes me like Conquest more.
So you've talked a bit about unlimited sideboarding and how you're not a massive fan of it. But do you think that sideboarding at all has a place in the game? Because we have seen a couple tournaments that have maybe a 5 card sideboard and 8 card sideboard, or would you prefer the approach of just the decks are completely submitted and that's it?
Um, I hmm. I think unlimited sideboarding is cool just to have like every now and then just to mix things up, but I don't think it should be a norm for tournaments because it just makes this setting where if you're a newish player, you don't have everything as other players, and it also just limits decks like Lionar or Songhai. So I think sideboarding like a limited sideboard is cool, but I'd prefer like Conquest and stuff.
Alright, so leading on from this, there's been lots of different tournaments, even team tournaments that we play on a team together. What has been your favourite tournament so far?
My favorite tournament overall.
Yeah.
Um, hmm. Probably the first Road to the Monolith. A long time ago, whenever I went versus Such in the grand finals, he was playing like Chimera, and it was just a really fun tournament overall because it was the first Conquest one in a very long time, and the whole format was pretty annoying just because it was a Vician all the time. So we got to see a lot of different factions. It was a lot of fun to play and watch as. And I got really lucky that tournament. I got Reaper. My Reaper stole like Zer's, Archons and stuff every single time.
All right. So we've been speaking about tournaments, which are very small relative to what has recently been announced, and that is the first ever Duelist World Championship. So the announcement post outlined the qualification process. So there'll be 16 players who will compete, with 15 of the 16 players needing to have won a tournament to qualify. So what are your thoughts on this approach, and do you think that winning a tournament is a big enough indicator of skill, or would you prefer to reward consistency with more spots being decided by circuit points rather than a one-off win?
I kind of like how they're doing it. How points lead into these little open brackets to get you into the championship. So I think it's pretty good because if it's just points overall, anyone who just plays every week in every single tournament can get in. So I think it's pretty good, and it's pretty skillful overall, I think.
Yeah, I think the number of times we've seen the same players winning or coming, top 2 in tournaments over time with Duelist shows that winning tournaments is a big enough indicator of skill for the most part, I think. And there's 15 tournaments you can win, so I think if you're good enough, if you're in the top 16, you've got a pretty good chance. So is it safe to assume you'll be gunning for a spot in the World Championship?
I definitely will be. I'll try to enter as many as I can still and try to get a spot for it.
Awesome. So coming away from tournaments for a bit now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the ladder system because there's been a lot of discussion over it. So you're known really well for your tournament success, but you've put significantly less focus into laddering. Could you have some of the reasons why you may not put as much effort into getting top 50, and do you think this will change once the S-Rank ladder gets reworked as has been promised?
The main reason is because I'll get a really high spot on ladder, and then I'll just be too scared to play. Mainly because of that, I'll go up one spot and then I'll drop 10, so it just really discourages me. And overall, I just don't feel like playing 20 games a day and stuff to keep up my ladder ranking. So I usually just ignore it and go for tournaments.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem that I know the developers have identified, where a lot of time the people in the top 5 will just get there and then just sit there for the rest of the season. So hopefully when that will change, it'll be more about skill and more about playing a little bit more, but not grinding the game. It's quite hard to find that balance, but hopefully they'll get there in the end. So what do you think some of the major differences between ladder and tournaments are?
Some of the major differences, probably Zenrui and Growthkeeper and techs like that, because, well, and unlimited sideboarding ones, because you get to use those options. But the main difference is that you don't know what you're going to expect on ladder, but usually in tournaments there's a set list of decks that you'll usually expect to go versus. So, for example, in Conquest, you could just completely counter Castiva with all 3 of your decks because you know they'll bring it, because it's just too good. But on ladder, you don't know what you're going to go versus.
Yeah, and I think something we've seen in the past when Vitruvian and Vaynar specifically have been really prominent in tournament metas is Jack's True Sight often just decides the whole tournament. I remember in Mesa's Spring Championship, I think only 2 players weren't playing Vaynar or Vitruvian, and nearly every game was decided by a turn 6 Jack's True Sight. So it's important to learn how the meta revolves around different cards in tournaments. So speaking from that, what advice would you give from to others who maybe they've only played a ladder and they're looking to make a transition into the tournament scene?
Speaking of that Spring Championship, I was one of the Vaynar players, and I really regret bringing Vaynar to that because every single game I went versus Jackson, it was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
But the major difference you can advice I'd give is whenever you go into ladder, you just bring anything that's good versus everything. But whenever you go to tournaments, just look at what you think the top 3 decks are and make your deck specifically to counter those 3. The other decks matter, but they don't matter as much. You want to not lose to the best decks.
And I think it's definitely something that's quite underexplored as Conquest has just come into the duelist scene, where there's a definite possible, when there's a clear weakness that you can get 3 decks to beat in your opponent's lineup, you can sometimes build your lineup to just target one specific deck that you expect them to bring. And I know some players have definitely started doing that, but I think it's definitely an area that's being quite underexplored. So, moving on, what are your thoughts on the difficulty of achieving S rank? Because you have achieved S rank since the start of your duelist career. So, the call has just quickly dropped out. I apologize a lot for that, guys. We'll quickly get back in. I am in Australia. It's probably my fault. Alright, Jay, we're back.
Hey.
I've just told everyone that it's probably my fault because I am Australia and I'm in a pretty bad spot for an Australian. So, some connection problems, but we'll just get back to where we were. So, you have achieved S rank in every season you've been playing the game. Do you think that the difficulty of achieving S rank is reasonable? Do you think it should be harder? Do you think it should be easier? Or are you pretty happy with how it is?
I think it's kind of easy, personally, but because the first 3 days I started playing the game, I got S rank pretty easily, I think. But for other players, it can be really hard. But I think overall it's pretty good. Just some people have an easier time, some people have a harder time.
Yeah, and I think it is kind of a hard question for me to ask you because you are one of the best players in the game. It's kind of you don't really expect it to be difficult for you to achieve S rank, but I also tend to agree. I think it's in a pretty decent spot. If someone works really hard, they can get there, but it's definitely not guaranteed for everyone, which is I think it's a pretty good spot. So moving on from ladder and tournaments, we recently saw patch 1.66, which brought some pretty major changes. So we saw nerfs to Zerik's Bloodborne spell, Black Solace, and changes to Vindicator and Emerald Rejuvenator. Do you think these nerfs were justified, or do you believe the meta had began to adjust well enough to these cards?
For Black Solace in particular, it wasn't doing a whole lot. Formless was a really good deck, but it wasn't because of Black Solace. I think it deserved the nerf because in the future it'd definitely come up and be broken just because 8-11 or 10-13 if you want to add the raping stats for 6 mana is just absurd. But that's how I feel on Black Solace because it wasn't as relevant, but it would be in the future for sure. Zerik's Bloodborne spell definitely needed a nerf or something in Zerik's just because it was the best deck no matter what. And aggro Zerik's was kind of annoying on ladder to prepare for. So there's that. I think it deserved it. Vindicator, I'm not sure if it needed that big of a nerf, but it's a cool change. It actually is cool because it synergizes with Starhorn. You can get +2/2 from just Starhorn Bloodborne spell. So I don't know. It'll probably be relevant in the future, maybe. The Emerald Rejuvenator, I wasn't sure about this at first, healing the opponent, but it actually is a really cool buff. It's not as amazing as it used to be, but it is still really good because healing your opponent in decks like Cassava, Kara, and stall decks, they don't really care about healing the opponent.
Yeah.
So I think the nerfs are pretty good.
Yeah, just
the changes too.
Vindicator change. I think it's more of a design kind of move where they're trying to stop problematic cards. Like the new Magmar sister would be pretty absurd with that card. So I think that's definitely one reason that we saw a change to that. But as you said, definitely a lot of potential synergy with Starhorn, and I think most Starhorn decks will run that as a 3 of. And maybe we'll see some other decks from Varth put it in with Spelljammers or something like that. Okay. Alright, so we recently saw the release of the 7 Sisters. Are there any that stick out as being particularly powerful or any that are particularly weak?
The Magmar Sister for sure. That one is one of the... that one's the best minion in the game, if not one of the best. It basically has Death Strike, it has... you can combo with Flash to clear Lilith boards, it trades into everything. It's just a really good minion overall. Other than her, I think Seon or the vet sister is really awesome because she's the only 4-drop in the game, or only card really in the game that you can play turn 2 to get a really good body, 3/4 body, and clear off board at the same time. You usually can't develop board and clear the same turn, but she lets you kill a 2-drop with the 3 attack and develops a 3/4. So I think she's great. And the neutral sister, I really like her in Cassava and Kara, because usually you don't want to play Spelljammer and help your opponent in those types of decks, and I also don't really like Sojourner unless I'm forced to, so she gives you a draw card that can't be Dispelled or Zenruid, really, so I like her a lot.
And any that are particularly weak in your mind?
I really don't know how I feel about the Banner sister, though. I think she's... I think the Banner sister's pretty weak, honestly. Like, she has good stats, but her ability, I just really don't like infiltrate minions that much, so I don't think I'll use her very often.
Yeah, makes sense. Alright, so, on to another topic, managlow.com. So very recently we saw the announcement of this duelist article and strategy site, Managlow, which you are part of alongside a lot of really well-known community members. Could you tell everyone a bit about Managlow and what we can expect from it in the future?
If any of you were around in like December, January, you know about Duelist Labs, and that was a similar site that some of us worked on. But this one's a lot better. It's a lot cleaner. It's a site that you go for top-level guides, articles, and a tier list. So in the future, we'll be working on a lot more guides to help out the new players or people in general, and hopefully a lot more cool stuff like videos and collaborations and stuff like that. But it's overall just a place for people to get really good information.
Yeah, definitely something I'm really excited about because unlike, some people, I'm not really a deck builder in the strictest sense where I start from scratch. I like to look at other people's ideas and kind of go from there. And some really, really good resources, some really, really good players. Basically, everyone who's on the team is an amazing player. So if you haven't already checked it out, I definitely recommend checking out Managlow. Something I'm very excited about personally. Okay, so on to just some quick questions finally. Getting a bit more of an idea about you. Are there any decks that you feel have gone under the radar and they're actually a lot stronger than the community realizes?
That's a good question. For now, I don't know if people know how good Saj is, but I think she's great still. I think Vitruvian still has a lot to show, especially Saj, because she's been underrated for so long, but she actually has one of the best Lionar matchups in the game, if not the best one that I'd use. So I think she has a lot of potential. Other than her, ones that I've not seen very often is Kalios midrange. Like, he has so many crazy combo potential. Like, you go turn 1 Kaido assassin or the 2/3 backstab thing.
Yeah.
Then the next turn you can go like any minion juxtaposition, steal their minion and backstab it, and you just get such a huge lead. Like he just has so many cool options, and you could drop like Heyman, and it'll never be out of range because of Kalios's Bloodborne spell. So I think he's one of the most underrated ones that I don't see very often, but I think is definitely good enough to beat tier 1 decks.
Alright guys, you heard it here first. Kalios midrange might be the next big thing. Alright, favorite and least favorite card in the game?
Giantis, even when he was a 5/2, was my favorite card. I just loved his art so much, or her art so much, and her ability is just really awesome. Like, you get to dictate where your opponent moves. It combos with Divine Bond and stuff, but especially now. My least favorite card is probably Jaxi. I really hate that card. Every single time I go versus 2, they both spawn on my opponent's corners. It just it makes me so annoyed.
Yeah.
But,
well, I've just learned something. I had no idea Dialytus was a girl. I've always said he, so I've already learned quite a lot from this. Alright, apart from yourself, of course, who do you think is currently the strongest player in the game?
Oh.
Bit of a tough one, because I know you're friends with nearly all the people who are in the running for this.
Yeah. I respect a lot of players in the game. Well, I respect quite a few, but I think it'd probably have to go to scientist. He's the only player I've seen who studies as much as he does. Like he will learn your opponent. Whenever I was helping him out for Grandmasters, he would literally just go for a few hours just researching their deck, breaking it down, telling me to play it with versus him a bunch of games, like best of tens and stuff. He would just study them down to a book. And other than that, he plays super well. I've rarely see him misplay. He has tournament results to back it up too. I just think right now he has the most dedication to be the best one.
Yeah, definitely something I've agreed with. I've felt like that for a very long time. He's had so many, number one ladder finishes basically since the thing started. I think he's always been top 5. I don't even know if he's been outside the top 2. I can't completely remember, but definitely a lot of first place finishes. Okay, and if there was one thing you could change about Duelist, what would it be?
That's a good question. I think the game right now is pretty good, but I think I would probably tone down like Jaxie. I think RNG is kind of okay, like the neutral sister. She's pretty cool, but I really dislike super early game RNG such as Jaxie because it could dictate a lot. Like if you're playing an aggressive deck and you go versus Jaxie and it gets a good spawn, you will never play Flame Bloods or Blood Tears or anything and let them live. Yeah. So I think it's too deciding of a RNG card that early in the game.
Yeah, and definitely something I've thought about in the past is that it's fine to have RNG, but when the outcomes are so massively different, like the difference between each spawn is never being able to reach it or being able to kill it for free, that's way too massive difference. If it's only a 1 square or so difference, then it's a lot easier to mitigate that RNG. So I definitely think that Jaxie, while not being overly powerful, it's having that RNG in every game can be a problem. So is there anything else you'd like to say quickly, and where can people find you?
You can find me on twitter.com/Nowayitsj. I usually don't use too many social medias other than that. I also go in the Duelist Discord a lot, so you can find me there. Other than that, I don't really have a lot to say other than Duelist is a great game, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Yeah. Alright, massive thanks to Jay for coming on. I think we all learnt quite a lot and got a really good insight into the competitive scene. I will be doing more of these top player interviews hopefully. If you want to see someone in particular, maybe say it in the comments and I'll see if I can organise it. And till next time guys, I'll see you later.